whether they're from, a different religion, whether they're people of color, whether they're queer people. Like, I don't really care. Women, men, I don't care. I want everybody to have an equitable and safe place to work. And that I feel like that's part of my job, is to create that for them.
Welcome to another edition of Brews and BizDev. This week, our illustrious guest is Martha Sawicki. Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
Nailed it.
First try.
Yes, woohoo! A senior manager of sales operations at Ingram Micro. So let's just get right into it. I'll give you a shot here, Martha, to just kind of introduce yourself, your elevator pitch, whatever you want us to know about you before we get into it.
All right. Well, you already pretty much introduced me. That's who I am, senior operations manager at Ingram. Yeah, we're the largest broadline tech distributor in the world, in case you didn't know that. So it's kind of an exciting industry to work in. And I do sales operations every day. And that's it. I'm not very exciting. I'm sorry.
Yes, nice. Well, thanks for coming out, and that's our episode for today.
Yeah, right. That's it. That's all I have to say. Thanks so much.
Excellent. I'll take it from here. I can talk.
Right.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think there's more to it than you're letting on.
Probably.
I always appreciate self-deprecation, so
I'm very good at
for that. But yeah, let's crack into the important stuff here.
Okay.
We like to feature brews here, and we've had a little fun going back and forth getting this episode set up. So why don't you share with us what you're featuring and why?
All right. Well, I'm featuring a lot of things, I guess. So I've got coffee in my Disney mug, even though it's very late in the day, and I'm also got Jameson, because apparently we're both a little too loosey-goosey, and we're like, you choose. No, you choose. No, you choose. And here we are. And somehow, even though we both chose, we didn't end up with the same thing.
Yeah, that's the impressive thing, is we took a long time to make a decision, and then that didn't work out either, which I take full responsibility for on this one. So, but yes, so you have a variety of things in front of you. Is that a special coffee, by the way, or is that office coffee?
Well, no, I'm at home, but it is just like it might be Folgers.
Yeah.
Right?
So not special. Good.
I'm not a very fancy person. With like store brand creamer.
Yeah.
Happening.
Okay.
So there you go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, Folgers, it's not the worst you could get. I mean, there are worse coffees out there.
I guess
freeze dried.
Secret about me, I really like bad coffee.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Like, I love it. I don't know why. Like, I like to go to diners and just have terrible coffee.
Nice. That is something that I've not heard before, ever, in any situation.
Well, sometimes people are very proud that they love very fine coffee, and I'm like, I like trashy coffee. Enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm good with middle range myself. Like, it doesn't have to be designer, but I've had some hotel room coffee that's I would never drink again. I've had some diner coffee that I will never return to again. There's some kind of happy middle in there. But short of, getting on some Chris Farley-esque, you replaced my coffee kind of rant here, we should probably move on. So just for, our viewers have seen this before, I've got Big Ditch Hay Burner I'm going with for the end of the day. So, which is a pretty big staple of mine for the end of the day. Sometimes not even the end of the day. But anyway, cheers.
Cheers. I'll cheers you my coffee.
Cheers coffee, yes.
Yeah.
Jameson, whenever you're comfortable.
It's going to happen.
Good. I'm sure. Is there any Jameson in the coffee? We can tell the truth.
Not yet.
All right, good.
But in 3 seconds.
Yeah. My next question will bring that out. All right. So to get into, you're in sales operations, right? You're managing sales operations. You came up through, I think it was being like a program manager. You've done communications at places, and then now you're in the wonderful world of managing others.
Yeah.
Not in an environment, in a virtual environment at this point, it looks like.
Yeah.
And in the world of managing others and hiring others, I've seen a lot of your LinkedIn posts, and they're about like how great your team is, right? And they're about, we still have positions open, and this place is kick ass, and
Yep.
which is great, because anytime you're having someone who's not in the recruiting department putting out that stuff is a good look. But also, we're connected on LinkedIn originally because in June you had written an article for Pride Month. And so, and we've covered, I think you've written a few articles that have covered different kinds of diversity, right? There's the millennial thing, so there's the generational, there's the queer and whatever else we want to call it, LGBTQ plus kind of diversity. And then of course the one that's mainly in the news for us these days, given the unrest, is diversity, like people of color and equity and actual inclusion.
Yeah.
So it's a big topic. It's why we got connected in the first place, because I had never seen anyone on LinkedIn, be willing to go out front and say like, hey, here's this from your queer manager, which for me, tell, was very like, oh, cool. Like we're taking steps in this environment to be able to open up this kind of environment to get past those 1950s norms, right?
Yeah.
And actually deal with what empowers people of all kinds to make better companies and make a better world. And so I got to say, I was actually inspired, right? Because I then started saying some things of my own and sharing some things. And there's always blowback, right? There's always blowback. There's always things to deal with. Hopefully not in your own company, though. And that's what I think we can talk about, because obviously you're in a position of management at this point.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear what your experience has been as far as what you're doing, as far as what you do to like promote people coming in, promote diversity coming in, to promote equity and inclusion once people are in. And, if there's been any also don't do this. I tried this and don't do it. I love those kinds of stories. So, so lead us off. What has been your experience, and how's that been going?
Oh, it's been great. It's been very easy.
Oh, good. Oh, cool.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, first of all, I'll say I was very surprised, because in the last couple months, I guess I have been kind of open. So like what you said about my article being kind of surprised me, because even some things I've said at work, people are like, I said, well, this is just easy to say. And they were like, no, it's not. What? Like, it just really kind of blew my mind. So I think that is some of the essence that I bring to people management, is just, this is who I am. Like, I think about authenticity and like layers, right? I think a lot of people do, but I think that everyone should always be able to be their authentic self, wherever they are. And obviously you're going to kind of tier that, like who you are at work should not be completely different than who you are at home. Yeah. That said, like what you do at a club or what you do on Friday night is not what you do on Monday morning.
Also shouldn't be the exact same either, right?
Right. But it shouldn't be, it should just be layers. Like you fundamentally should still be who you are, and you should still have the freedom to be who you are. And so I think by taking that approach and being very honest about who I am and my experiences, and really not, I don't really stop to think about it. It's just, this is who I am. This is what I am. And I don't really think hard, like I'm out as a queer person. This is my family. This is what we do, and these are my opinions. These are my thoughts. And I realized quickly that that was different for people. And for me to, I have a very diverse team. And so to talk very openly with people of color, for example, about here are things traditionally, maybe it's dress code, is I always go nuts about dress code. Like here are things in dress codes that traditionally have racial stereotypes or have racial prejudice built into them, or even queer prejudice built into it that people don't really think about. And because it's just, this is how you dress in a workplace and this is how it's always been. And I'll be like, I don't really gel with that, right? So, as long as you are kind of following these general guidelines, like we're going to take the racial stuff out of it, or we're going to take the queer stuff out of it. And I guess when you're that open with people, they were kind of surprised, and it helped kind of build trust, I guess, where now they are very almost too open with me sometimes, where they'll just tell me when they find things inequitable. They'll tell me when they find things you know, are not diverse enough, or they feel things are maybe misrepresented, they feel things are stereotypical, whatever it is, whether it's a policy, whether it's just maybe we'll be in a training and they feel like the training like inadvertently was insensitive, right? And they'll just come right up, come marching right up to me, no matter who they are, and they'll say, okay, here's the feedback, here's what we think. And yeah, I made it pretty clear to them early on that I felt like that was part of my responsibility as their manager, to make sure that they had an equitable place to work, like everyone, regardless of who they are, whether they're from a different religion, whether they're people of color, whether they're queer people. Like, I don't really care. Women, men, I don't care. I want everybody to have an equitable and safe place to work. And that I feel like that's part of my job, is to create that for them. And so we've actually created kind of our own team culture within the larger team. And yeah, it's been pretty cool. Nice. I don't know if that answered your question, because your question was pretty big.
Yeah, it is big. So that did. As I ask big questions, so the answers are always right. But yeah. That nailed it, and it's interesting because one of the things I hadn't thought about is because then you had been at Evergreen Health, right? So you're in an environment where the business environment there's a lot of that going on. So it wasn't a rarity. It was it was the exact opposite. And then coming into a different environment where it's a little more rare, if nothing else. And particularly, I know sales operations can be different. But marketing and sales, you're the front facing. I mean, unless you're doing internet marketing, you can be you're hidden, right? If you can do digital. Right. You can do marketing and be hidden, but like my version's a blend, right? So you're out literally in front of people.
Yep.
And there's a line when you're presenting to potential clients and things like that, where you do kind of have to get it clear in advance, because like you said, you don't want to be exactly the same. Like, you can't who you are on Friday night necessarily in the office or with clients. Yep. And there's things that's okay, is it worth the potential loss of $100,000 for me to be able to color something? You're like, whatever it is, you really got to work those things out at a separate level, because it's not just about even your culture. It's about who's seeing you and how then the company is coming across. So have you noticed any challenges in that area as far as how the company is being concerned about how it's showing up for prospects and clients? Has there been any blowback or any issues? And like, how do you navigate that?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, honestly, I think we're yes and no. We're kind of towing the line, and I think in general, people do realize that they're in a corporate setting, and they are almost so used to and programmed. And it's funny because I kind of think about, like, when I was thinking about kind of what we might talk about on this show, I was thinking about, like, even when I was just starting my career and, just coming out of college and grad school, and it was like all this advice from really well-meaning people that were like my parents' age, and their advice was essentially like, totally conform, be cookie cutter, and don't be who you are, like, regardless. And it was like, oh God, like, it was all, you can't wear this, you can't look like this, you can't do your hair this way, you can't have tattoos, you can't do, can't wear certain kinds of jewelry. And it was, okay, all right, fine. And then I got into the workplace, and it started kind of asking, like, why not? Right? Like, why can't I do certain things? And why can't I, because I started kind of thinking through the logic of, what are the boundaries? Kind of like what you're talking about now. Like, where do the two things meet? Where does my sort of personal expression kind of bump up against your willingness to like receive my personal expression? And so I think, though, that a lot of people, because I think they've gotten similar advice, or maybe they've worked in these kind of white collar corporate settings for so long, that they're almost used to not hiding who they are, but they're used to having to be careful or having to be very thoughtful, and they're not as used to being able to have these conversations or be able to talk about, their maybe personal choices with their hair, with their jewelry, with their nail polish, with even things like shaving. Like, it sounds so ridiculous, but like my first job, I remember like these women were talking about another woman who was wearing a skirt and didn't shave her legs, and they were like horrified by that.
Right.
And I'm like, but there's nothing in dress code that says you can't. And also, like, it's just a social norm. That's not a hygiene thing. That's not like, that's just like, why do you care? Stop looking at her legs. You're being weird, right? But I think that's what's happening, is that it's almost like we're just pushing out a little bit out of the culture that we've been in, like as a team, and just sort of expressing ourselves a little bit. And so we haven't gotten any major blowback yet because we haven't made enough of an impact yet, I guess. Right. It's more like the ideology that's sinking in rather than the expression.
The expression of it, yes. Yeah, we haven't, gone like full Madison Butler, for example. I don't know if
No.
Who I'm a fan of, like a big fan. I bring it up as like if you're willing to go that far out there and say what needs to be said, like, cool, you will get blowback. It's also a great case study for you're going to get professional blowback.
Yeah, we're well, and the other thing, I guess the other thing is kind of on that note is, in some ways, it's not, nothing I've ever done intentionally has been a political statement.
Yeah.
Or has been like exaggerating a point to get attention, like to bring attention to something, or to make people think about something. It's just like, this is just how I look, or this is just a picture of my family on my desk, right? Because I'm married to a woman. Like, this is just my family. Like, I'm not being political right now, or I'm not trying to spark a conversation about families. This is just this is my desk. You're in my office. Like, this is us, right? And so, it's kind of, I think it's the same thing with the team, where it's like, I don't think anyone's trying to, it's about that authenticity, and it's about finding the right layer of authenticity for the workplace. But we're not trying to create any type of stir per se, and we're not trying to create any type of like statement. It's just like, hey, this, there are things maybe in the dress code, or there are things, not Ingram's per se, but in general, everyone's dress code. There are things that historically have been in there that might actually have bias baked in. There are things in hiring practices that have bias baked in, right? And so we're just going to try to strip some of that away to make it a more equitable workplace, as opposed to putting on a demonstration or something.
Right. Yes. We're coming out guns blazing. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Again,
right.
I appreciate it. Fits my style pretty well. And that's always been a quandary, right? I mean, even if you take away the, why, whether it's a people of color conversation or a queer conversation or whatever, just a being different than the norm conversation, like the impacts are the same. They're not equally distributed, the impacts, right? My version of being different still carries a lot of privilege with it that other people can't get away with. And that's, for some of us, that's the extra reason to be a little more in your face with it, because like, I can do this and other people can't. And then there's a point at which you have to balance it with financial business concerns, because that's technically what's running the show. So finding that dance, and especially, for me, it's one thing, I've been radicalized since I was 15, right? It's like, listen, the music I listen to, like, it's always been in that vein. There are some folks now who are earnestly attempting to change things, and not even for themselves, right? So like a manager, so if we're speaking right now to a manager of a department, and or even a small business owner, and they themselves are not a person of color or LGBTQ, right? They're just, hey, how do I help do this better? Because I don't even know where to look, right? I don't know where to start. I could be staring at implicit bias and not even know it, which is why it's implicit. So from that person's perspective, but who also is not just doing fluff, right? It's not just doing stuff because people are looking at them and because they're supposed to, but is really earnestly looking to change, and doesn't necessarily have that whole perspective, because who does, right? Terminologies change. I mean, good luck keeping up with it. But what's a good place for that? I mean, you mentioned dress code, you mentioned hiring practice, anything in particular you've seen where it's like, here's where you can start looking and here's what you can look for?
Yeah. So a couple things. And I used to work in marketing, as you said, marketing and communications.
Yeah.
So a couple things. I think that start with your own team, right? And start counting. Literally every time you're in a meeting, especially if you're not. So, for example, as a woman in particular, because I'm in a field that's mostly men, when I go into a meeting, I always notice, like, if I'm the only woman or if there's 2 women and 10 men, right? Like, so I count. I always count because I'm always the minority in that regard. If you're in the majority, you probably don't count, right? So start counting. You go into a meeting, how many men are here? How many women are here? What's the percentage? How many people of color are here? And then you start thinking beyond that, or like how many openly queer people are here? How many, right? You keep going. Then you start looking at the other commonalities, in my opinion, in the meeting, right? Like maybe you do jot it down, or maybe you remember and you think, okay, well, when I was in a meeting of like maybe frontline workers or entry-level workers, the mix was a lot different than when I was in a meeting of all managers, or when I was in a meeting of directors, or when I was sitting in an executive room. Like, you start to notice the mix gets different. Why? So you start asking why, right? And you literally start asking people why. And you start thinking, well, who did we interview? Well, how did we recruit? Well, how long have people held these positions? Well, we just had a new hire in an executive role and it's a white man. Why? Who interviewed, right? Like, how did we recruit for that? Maybe that person is the best suited for the position. Maybe they're the most qualified. Certainly not saying they're not. But like, if they were a friend of a friend of a friend that got recommended in, versus like, how did we recruit and did we widen our network and did we, how are we getting these people? And so you start to see that, and that in my mind kind of starts to open your eyes, and then you start to see it everywhere. Like, if you're on a team or if you're part of a company that does any events, you start to look at your speaker panels. What do your speaker panels look like, right? And you just start to like maybe save the programs. And then at the end of the year, you say, well, these were our speaker panels. Like, do you notice anything?
Yes.
Or, same with your marketing materials. You start to train your eye, and you notice that any marketing materials that have real human beings, as opposed to, coloring or something like that. Well, how many men, how many women, how many people, that maybe you can identify that have certain types of, that are differently abled, how many people that are outwardly queer that you can kind of notice, right? And you start counting all these things. You start counting age, you start counting, then you also start looking at, when do we use people of color in our advertising versus when do we use white men, right? And so when you start in like the most basic way, where you're just counting, and then you start to notice trends. And once you start noticing trends, you can't stop noticing trends, and then you get kind of angry. But that's okay.
Yes. That's what this
then you
is
turn
for.
out like me. Right, exactly. Yeah, but I think counting is the best way, honestly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's simple, and people can get their heads around it, because you don't need some giant worksheet. You don't need, like a 3-day retreat with consultants. You need to just start where you are.
Yeah. Just notice your own group, notice your own surroundings, notice your own candidates, and start thinking, and just start asking why. And maybe, and it's possible. I think people get kind of defensive because they think that asking why did we hire that person, or why was this our candidate pool, or why does our executive room look the way it does, kind of implies that something insidious is going on, or implies that they themselves are, but there is a systemic, there are systemic inequities, there are systemic disparities. And so, you're part of a really huge system that has led to this. It's not necessarily even that you yourself have done something instead, because,
Yes.
because too, you start thinking, and I mean, it really, you can kind of boil the ocean, but it's like, well, the only qualified candidates that applied were, say, cis straight white men. Okay, fine. Why? why are there only
Right.
people that meet a certain profile, right? And maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe it has to do with education and equity. Maybe it has to do with promotional path and equity, right? So it just kind of gets larger and larger. And so I think people get defensive and they forget that there is a whole system at play. It doesn't mean that they are prejudiced. It doesn't mean that they're doing something insidious in their business. But once you start to notice it, you can't stop noticing it. And you have to start to kind of push back and ask why and what can I do and how can I change this, and start working to change the profile a little bit.
No, that's awesome. That's and I hear in there because there's also this line to walk, maybe more of a path in the middle more than it is an actual line, because yes, it's easy to defend, like have a reactionary defense, right? Like, I'm not a racist. The simplest, like, if I look in the mirror, like, I don't want to have this be the answer. So, just shut that whole narrative down.
Right.
And then there's also, to the point about the systemic nature of the issues, it's also, you can fall off the other side called, oh, this is screwed from the bottom up for 300 years. Like, whatever, like, what am I going to do? And I just need to make I just need to do my paycheck. Like, let me just get through this. Right. And so, like, from either extreme, you end up not engaging. But if you can stay in the middle and it's like, no, what if it's not my fault personally? Like, what if there's a difference between responsibility and fault? Right. Where I can say, this is not my fault. Like, I did not do this. And I can still look to take responsibility for some role, some way that I played a role in it, which is going to be the easiest access to open something up versus finding where everybody else is responsible. But that's a fine line. And I mean, I used to work in, like personal development, and didn't like, that's a fine line that people who dedicate their entireties to like trying to manage that fail, because our brains aren't actually wired that way.
No.
Our brains don't have that distinction. Our brain is defend myself and my narrative at all costs. And this is a tough, challenging conversation to have.
It is. And, one thing that I think about a lot, and I said this in a meeting recently, and it people received it in different ways, but I don't care because that's who I am. But, like outside of the office, your goal can be to try to change people's hearts and their minds and try to, bring people around. But in the office, at work, I don't care if you're a racist. I really don't. I don't care if you're homophobic or if you're hateful, if you're a bigot. I don't care, because that's outside the scope of my job as a manager. That's outside of the scope of our company's job. What we have to do, what our responsibility is to create a code of conduct, right? To create a way that we think is acceptable for people to behave in our workplace and enforce it, right? And it takes it all out of it. It's not even about identifying if you're a racist or not, or identifying if you hate queer people or not. Like that's not even on the table at that point. It's just, this is how we treat people. You have behaved in a way that was outside of our code of conduct because you made a comment that was hateful, or because you said something inappropriate, or because you did something that made someone very uncomfortable, and then you deal with it from there. Like, it doesn't matter if that person goes home and still hates queer people. Like, that's really outside of my scope. Like, in my personal life, would I hope that I could change that person's heart? Of course. But like, as a manager, that's not my job. Like, my job is just to keep people safe in the workplace and to create a way that we behave and that we treat each other and make sure that everybody's safe and that everybody is treated with respect. And that's it. That's literally the job. So in that regard, it's kind of easy, right? Because it becomes a little more black and white, like, because it also takes intention out of it, right? Because sometimes people with good intentions make mishaps, right? I mean, because maybe they're, like you said, the LGBTQ names are changing, right? New information comes out, as we become a more tolerant society, there's more education to be had, and people from different generations sometimes are doing their best, but they haven't kept up. And so, you can educate someone and say, okay, well, here's some education, and at work, you don't say things like this, or you don't behave a certain way. And it also takes some of the, it takes some of that murkiness out of it, I guess. You know, you don't have to sort of figure out why somebody said something. Like, right? You just have to say, you can't say that at work, and leave it at that.
It gives you a line and to deal
Here's the
with,
line.
and then, you know, analyze it on your own time, right?
Absolutely.
But it's not your job. It's not your job to have people change their thoughts and feelings, only their words and actions outside of a certain scope.
Yeah, because, you know, even back to what you said before about the article kind of surprising you, I said in a meeting, I apparently am a very surprising person and I just don't know it. But I said in a meeting, in like a management meeting, I said, well, every manager that's on this call, like part of your job is to, if you're a people manager, then part of your job is diversity and inclusion, right? Because you manage people. And so you should, it was right after George Floyd was murdered. And I said, everyone should be able to meet with their team right now and just say out loud, you cannot be on my team and behave in ways that are racist, period. And people were like, oh, I don't know if I can say, what do you mean you don't know if you can say that? And they're like, well, it would take a lot of courage for me to say that. Why? Like, you're not telling people they can't be racist.
Yeah. They just can't act it.
You can't, here is the line at work. Like, your job is not to, you don't have to even have the tough conversations if you don't want to. Your job is simply to say, this is the line. This is how we behave. This is how we treat people. We don't say, you know, and you don't cross the line. That's it. It's that simple. It's the same as dress code, right? Like, you have no problem sending somebody home for their sneakers. You can say, you can't be racist.
Yes.
It's not that hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet.
Here we are.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, you know, that violates the whole don't call me on mine and I won't call you on yours thing, which people even at work like in those kind of areas, right? Well, and isn't it okay if I know that the executive actually is too? So, you know, I don't want to get on his bad side. But obviously not at Ingram. Other places I'm talking about here.
That's right. Yeah.
So, cool. I'm going to hit on ops because I know you're like a lean lover, right? And like all into ops. So I don't want to leave that out of the conversation. And you're now managing sales operations. So first, can you like walk me through what's the day in the life? Like, what do you actually do in managing sales operations?
I cry a lot. No, I'm kidding.
Or Jameson in my coffee at 10 a.m.
Oh, yeah, no. So my team specifically does all, so the folks that I manage do all sales support. And so pretty much it's all that kind of transactional work that from the time a customer submits an order to us. So like when sales is done and the order actually comes through all the way till the customer's happy. Whether they've gotten their product in the mail, whether they had to return it, whether they had to get a pricing, like what, all of it. Okay. So they take it all the way across that finish line. And so I think we have like 300 accounts on our team. I have 7 different teams underneath me. So I deal with them. No, and I help them with their everyday escalations. I help them with their everyday just breaking down the barriers for them and helping them be able to do their jobs better. But also I help them create processes and create efficiencies at the ground level. So on one hand, like I create operational efficiencies for the whole business unit that'll, you know, and I do that mostly kind of with other operations managers. But then down at the ground level, I essentially help them articulate their ideas and put them into like an actual operations, like let me leanify this for you. Let me help you turn this into a process. And so, it's their everyday. How do we create everyday efficiencies? Okay.
So, So in Ingram, what you're calling sales operations sounds like what's often like would be customer success now at this point. Cause like, it's already been sold. Your guys' jobs is to like take it and make sure they're happy with it and that it works.
100%. Yep.
All right. Excellent. Are there any, so like taking this, so that maybe someone else can take something away, any particular system? I mean, obviously you're not Ingram Micro, you're not using a CRM. So are you guys like running Salesforce? Are there any particular systems that you are an adherent to and say, and I would recommend this to anybody?
So we have our own.
Oh,
Yeah, so we have
fancy.
our own system, our own order management system, and then yeah, no, we use like your normal office suite, I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. So,
Yeah,
well,
like all
that's,
most of our tools are custom.
yeah,
So
you DI making your own. That's the plus of being in tech sometimes is
yeah,
like we
pretty
could
much. Yeah,
have this crew build one for us.
I'm just gonna make my own.
So in a world of businesses coming up, and we're big at Renoun, we position ourselves as the customer success agency, right, versus
Mm-hmm.
marketing agency, because ultimately that's what it's always going to be about. You
Mm-hmm.
know, are your customers getting what they're supposed to get out of what they came in for? Are they happy? Of course, then are they raving and are they sharing and promoting you? Like there's all those extra levels. But being that that's so important, and being that in my experience, people drop it sometimes at that point, right? People sell something, especially if you're in a small business, you're running kind of ad hoc, you sell it and then you move on to the next sale. The salespeople are on. There's someone called customer service,
Right.
who are reactive at best.
Yep.
So if you were taking, and this isn't quite lean, this is almost like someone's starting like to pay attention to customer success, right? So someone's going to, you know what, we should take better people, take care of these folks, because
Yeah.
especially in an environment like this, right? Our current situation, the COVID and the economics that will be coming, the whole like let's make up the gap by creating new customers. Like, okay, maybe, probably not. Maybe in some segments, maybe, but mainly we've been saying, right, like focus on taking care of who you have, going next level with them. What do they need? What do you have to
Yeah.
put in to make that better for them?
Yeah.
So what tips do you have, since this is your job, managing it at a high level, managing other people to do it at the micro level, wherever necessary?
Yeah.
Where can people start and look and get better at taking care systematically, right? Not just willy-nilly, I had a thought, so let me reach out to this person. How to systematically take care of their customers better?
Yeah. So such a big question. Stop asking me big questions. You didn't say
I'll
this would be
drink while you
hard.
think. This is my formula.
Yeah, God, this is too hard. No, honestly, with my team, even when I'm explaining customer experience is what we end up calling it, and kind of my expectations, I always go back to Disney. And I know that, whatever you want to say about Disney, at the end of the day, their business model and in the parks in particular is, I mean, people study it for a reason. They have a business school for a reason, right? And so their business model in terms of almost every best practice can come into how they treat their customers. And so I always kind of tie it back to Disney for my team. But, for example, the hiding of the masks, like the way that Disney has the tunnels and you don't see the characters, right? And they go in the tunnels and, you don't see them changing the garbage and you don't see them, right? Like they hide the mess from you. And a lot of times we don't hide the mess. We totally like take you on a tour of the sausage factory and it's disgusting. And then people, we have these internal conversations right in front of our customers, and people don't even have the kind of self-awareness to realize what they're doing. Whether it's through email, whether it's on a conference call, and they start having these internal conversations, maybe you have too many cooks in the kitchen. And it's like, so it's those types of little things you start thinking about what you're exposing to your customer. You start thinking about the customer entanglement stuff. You start thinking about the operational experience. Like if you can not necessarily build custom processes, but if you can collaborate with the partner to create processes that are mutually beneficial, it becomes really difficult for them to make a choice to go to somebody else because they don't have that experience there. Like it's just so easy for me to like send you my business because you already know who I am. And we already spent all this time making these, making it so that it's low touch or something for both of us. It's automated for both of us. We've done the operational work. It's really hard for them to go somewhere else at that point. Like you'd have to really do something for them because they'd have to do all that work again. Mm-hmm. Because even though they do it once with your team, it's like their operations team is going to have to do it with every single group if the competitor even offers that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the kind of stuff I would say. I don't even know if I answered your question. I just said words.
Yeah, words. I'd nod and then say, yeah, no, it was great.
No,
it was great.
Those were words.
No, it was. Look up Disney, look into their actual practices, not just like, hey, they have a park that we don't want to go to at the moment. And then also build a better system.
Absolutely. Well, you think too with Disney, a lot of people don't know about their business model, the method to the madness, but it's the stupid stuff. You think about a lot of people, if you don't know Disney's business model, you don't maybe know about the fireworks, right? That why does Disney have fireworks every single night? Because people were leaving the park too early. And if people leave the park too early and the park is open 4 hours past when people leave, then they're not spending money. But if they have a reason to stay, a free fireworks show, more people will stay. Oh, but how do we get people to the park earlier? Oh, we'll do a flag raising ceremony. And we'll invite veterans every single time. And we'll honor a specific veteran for free. It's free for us. We're here. We're staffed anyway. But then people want to come. People want to be there for the flag raising. People submit their veteran's name and things like this. And so everything they do has a reason.
Yeah.
And everything you do at work all day, every day should have a reason.
That's a big should.
It's a big should. It's a big should. It's one of those things that sounds really good when you say it.
Yeah.
Right? Like you write it up and you put it on and then you just go back to your life.
Yeah, then I reduce it down to it does have a reason behind it, not in front of it though. That's the difference.
Right. But long story short, I do think you should ask yourself why you're, in lean, you ask why all the time. And it kind of goes back to the diversity. So start asking why, but you should ask yourself why you do things. And if you don't have when you stop to ask, if you don't have a good answer, if it's somebody told me to do it this way, we always did it this way. It's, I don't know, I just started doing it this way. Yeah. This is what the customer asked for. I don't know. That's not a good answer. When you stop to smell when come up for air once in a while, you should, there should be reasons behind it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know there's I had a guest on a few weeks ago who brought back up, I had forgotten about the 5 whys exercise, because I think they also do lean training. Yeah, it's it's like this, and it is one of those things in organizational development where it seems so stupid when you're doing it, right? Especially if you're a cynic. I don't know any, but if you were one, it's like, what is this? Why this? Why this? But you dig down into either finding pointlessness, where you find, oh, we don't have to do this, let's stop, or you actually get to the actual why all the way under, and you can then figure, let's keep doing this, or let's do it better, or let's reinforce it, or given that that's why we're doing it, is there some better expression, right? Is there some other thing we can do? And you end up having good creative ideas, not random brainstorm, we could do this, and we could give them a gift, and we could, send flowers, and we could you actually come up with those rooted answers, rooted in why.
Yeah, and that I think that's exactly what it is, because some people can 5 why in their brains. I usually do. So when I learned the exercise, I was like, what? People have to do this? But not everybody thinks that way. And when you start kind of at the end of the day, it really can be boiled. Whatever method you use is just, do you know what problem you're solving? Because half the time the solutions that people come up with, but it kind of goes back to what I just said, why are you running that report every single day? You're running this report every day. Why?
Yeah.
Well, what do they need that for? I don't know. It's you don't even know. You're just running them a random report that takes your time, that has random fields, and you didn't even really understand what they're trying to accomplish, because that could very well not be. It's usually not the answer. The answer that people come up with is usually not the right one, because they don't know what they're actually trying to solve.
Yeah. So you help them get down to it, and then you provide an actual better solution.
Right. Yep.
Nice. See, we did answer it. I told you it was going to come around. Happy together. Cool. Well, I'm going to close on that, because I love the Wise thing, and I'm going to let you move on with the rest of your coffee and Jameson drinking for the evening. But thanks so much for coming out and taking the time and participating and getting some Jameson and all that with the back and forth. We did a lot of setup. We did a lot of setup for this one, and we did it. We made it. But I appreciate it. So yes. Great culture at Ingram Micro. Congratulations on the work you've done, especially like the work that you haven't realized is actually impactful, and it is. So I'm glad we got to throw that up in your face as well, too. Like that stuff makes a difference even when you don't notice it. So thanks for that, and thanks for coming out.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.